Jai Hind students, in this lecture we are going to discuss about one important topic from Unit 5, that is Information Technology Act. In Unit 5 there are two acts, Information Technology Act and Consumer Protection Act. But in this lecture we will discuss about the Information Technology Act. We are doing lot of transactions with the help of IT. Now if we have to sign any deal, there is no requirement that we should be available there. So we can just sign that deal by sitting on our laptop and can sign that deal, can sign that contract. So these are the electronic contracts. So this is the act that gives the legal recognition to all that kind of the contracts. Even we all can see that we are doing lot of transactions through the electronic means. So there should be some sort of the place where legal rules must be there just to control all that kind of the transactions. If there would be any kind of the problem, so there should be some space, there should be some kind of the like place where the regulations, rules are maintained in relation to all that kind of the electronic transactions. So IT Act is very important and it constitutes that kind of the space that includes all important matters, all important laws related with the transactions which are done by the people through the electronic means. So that's why Information Technology Act is very important to understand and to learn. These are the salient features of the IT. Electronic contacts have been made legally valid because of the electronic secure communication. In this act, we will discuss about the digital signatures also. We will see that how the security procedures are used when we apply the digital signatures on any electronic format or document. Then digital signatures, how they are secured by the asymmetric crypto system that we will discuss in this act in detail. We will discuss about that who are the certifying authorities, what are their roles, why they are so important. We will discuss about the controllers, we will discuss about the electronic governance, we will discuss about repository that has been maintained by controller in relation to the public keys of the digital signatures. We will discuss about the various stringent penalties or the crimes which are related with the computer. So that's why the act is important. We will discuss about the code which has been assigned for dealing with all the matters that are related with the electronic communication or electronic contracts, or if there would be any hacking or there is any problem related with the computer source documents. So what are the penalties for that? So where is the code for that? So we will discuss all about these important things in this Information Technology Act. Moving further, like this is the act that extends to whole of India and it is also applicable to any violation or contravention of the provisions anywhere in the world. So this is the act which is applicable not only to India, to the whole world, but it is not applicable to the below mentioned transactions. Like here in this slide you can see it is not applicable to the negotiable instruments, it is not applicable to electronic checks, power of attorney, trust, will, or if there is any contract related to the immovable property or any kind of the documents which the central government has properly specified that it cannot be done through the electronic means. So all these transactions, IT Act is not applicable. These are the objectives of the act. This is the act that gives the legal recognition to all the transactions that has been carried out by means of the electronic data. This is the act that states about the electronic filing of documents. It facilitates the electronic storage of data. Gone are the days when we were just storing all the data in the manual format or in the files. Now the data may be maintained with the help of the electronic mediums or maybe electronically stored by the various organizations, various offices of the government. So that is a good thing that has been introduced with the help of this act only. This is the act that has given the legal recognition to the digital signatures, and the good thing is that the act has amended Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, Bankers Book Evidence Act and Reserve Bank of India Act. Now there is electronic documentation possible in the case of all these four acts. So this is all about the objectives of this act. Now let us just understand what is called as an electronic signature or digital signature. Like if I am going to sign any contract through the electronic means, I cannot sign that contract in a physical format. So I can sign it on the electronic format. So electronic signatures or the kind of the signatures like that may replace your handwritten signatures that may be called as the digital signatures or electronic signatures. Digital signatures is recognized as a valid method of the authentication. Like to authenticate any of my contract, any of my electronic document, I need signature, but I cannot sign it, sign on my like you can see like on this board, I cannot sign. So like to sign that particular document, I need digital signature. And digital signatures are not only the electronic signatures, they are good because they are secured. How they are secured? They are secured with the help of the asymmetric crypto system and the hash function. Let us understand the provisions related to the digital signatures. We can affix our digital signatures on any kind of the electronic record to which we want to give the authentication. Digital signature authenticates all our electronic records. Like if I have originated any electronic record and I want to just authenticate it, I have to put my signatures on that. So in electronic formats, I can put the digital signatures. Hash function means whenever we put our digital signatures or we use the digital signatures, so the kind of the message that we have written, it is converted into some kind of the like binary digits, which is not a readable form. We will discuss this in detail with the help of the asymmetric crypto system. Let us understand what is called as the asymmetric crypto system. For example, you have the digital signatures and Mr. A also has the digital signatures. You want to just send some kind of the message to Mr. A so that he can only read, or the others should not be like it is a confidential message. You only want that Mr. A should read that. No, none other than Mr. A should read that particular message. So what you can do, you can take the use of the digital signature of Mr. A. How it is possible? There are two keys that are associated with the digital signatures. One is the private key, the other one is the public key. The address of the public key is always available with the certifying authority from whom we have taken the digital signature and with the controller. So if I want to write something to Mr. A, I can just have a proper access to the public key of Mr. A. I can take it from the repository which is maintained by the controller, and once I have the public key available with me, I will use that key address and will just write one message. If once I will put the public key on that message, it will be converted into the other function. It will be converted with the help of the algorithms or hash function. It will be converted into the binary language or binary digits which is not readable. So whenever with the use of the public key of the receiver, you try to just make that message or convert that message into the unreadable form, that is called as encryption. Now Mr. A receives your message, and once he will apply his private key of the digital signatures on that message, the message would again be decrypted and it would become available into the readable text form. So this is the way that how the messages authenticated by the digital signatures are properly secured. They are properly secured with the help of the asymmetric crypto system. If in this example you will see that one of the message Mr. Gupta has written to Mr. Sen. So while he wrote that message, he wrote to Mr. Gupta, he wrote to Mr. Sen that I accept all the terms and the conditions discussed by us today. Now Mr. Gupta wants that nobody other than Mr. S. Sen should read this text. So what he will do, like he will use the public key of Mr. S. Sen, will write the message to him and will just inform him that I have sent you some message, some confidential information through the electronic means. And Mr. S. Sen, once he will receive that message, he will use his private key on that message. Once Mr. Gupta used the public key on that message, the message will take this form. Here you can see it is into the kind of the some coding language, that is not into the readable form. The message has been encrypted. And how it has been possible? It has been possible because of the hash function, mathematical calculations, formulas and algorithms. And once Mr. S. Sen will receive this message, he will again use his private key and will convert the non-readable text into the readable text, and that would be called as the decryption. So when the message readable text is converted into the coding text. So that unreadable text is also called as the ciphertext. So this is how that most of the people use the digital signatures just to secure all their electronic communication. Now, how we can have the digital signatures? For this, the person who want the digital signature is called as the subscriber, and the person to whom you apply for digital signatures, they are called as the certifying authorities. There may be number of certifying authorities that are available nearby your place, so you may go and you may apply for digital signatures. If you are applying for digital signatures, so you will be called as the subscriber, and the person who is going to give you the digital signatures, they are called as the certifying authorities. Once when we apply for the digital signatures, so the certifying authorities used to verify the applicant in all the terms. They used to check the authenticity, the identity of that person, and if they feel that the everything is okay, by paying a prescribed fees, the person or the applicant used to get the digital signature certificates. So if you are the holder of the digital signature certificate, it shows that you are the owner of the digital signature certificates, and you even can make your own public or private key for your digital signatures. So this is the way how the digital signature works. Like, what are the duties of the subscribers? Like, if you are the holder of the digital signature, the first important duty that belongs to you is the generating of the key pair. You have to generate two key pair, one key pair, that is the private key and the public key. They both are corresponding to each other, and the kind of the public key that you have generated, the address of the same you may share with the certifying authority to whom you have taken the digital signature, and that certifying authority will further give the address of your public key to the controller. Controller is a person who has maintained the repository of all the public keys of the digital signatures. So in our whole country, if I want to access the address of the public key of any person, I can check the repository that has been maintained by the controller. So this is the first duty, to generate the key pair. The second is acceptance of the digital signature certificate, which has been given to that subscriber by the certifying authority. And upon accepting a digital signature certificate, the subscriber certifies that he holds a private key corresponding to the public key listed in the certificate, and he also accepts that all information which is given in the certificate is true to the best of his knowledge. It is the duty of the subscriber to control his private key. If the private key is compromised by the subscriber in any form, it is the duty of the subscriber to inform as soon as possible to the certifying authority. If there is any kind of the problem or any kind of the misuse that happens with the digital signature of the subscriber, so it is the pure responsibility of the subscriber if he has not informed the certifying authority within the proper time. Then who is called as a controller? Controller may be defined as a person or a kind of the authority that gives the licenses to the certifying authorities to issue the digital signatures. Like, controllers are appointed by the central government, and there is no only one controller. There may be deputy controllers, there may be the controllers, assistant controllers, those who assist the controllers in all their functions. When we talk about the controller, the controller discharge his functions under the act subject to the general control and directions of the central government. When we talk about the chain, there is one chain, or you can say the hierarchy in the case of this IT Act. There are few important terms that I am going to just discuss with you right now. Subscriber is a person who applies for the digital signature. The second is the certifying authority. This is the authority to whom we apply for the digital signature as a subscriber. मुझे अगर डिजिटल सिग्नेचर चाहिए तो मैं सब्सक्राइबर हूँ, और जिसको मैं अप्लाई करूँगी कि भाई मुझे डिजिटल सिग्नेचर्स प्रोवाइड करा दीजिए, सो दैट अथॉरिटी वुड बी कॉल्ड एज द सर्टिफाइंग अथॉरिटी. सर्टिफाइंग अथॉरिटीज़ को डिजिटल सिग्नेचर देने के लिए लाइसेंस लेना पड़ता है, और लाइसेंस उनको कौन देता है? कंट्रोलर. कंट्रोलर जो होता है उसको कौन अपॉइंट करता है? सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट. सो दिस इज़ अ चेन. सब्सक्राइबर, देन सर्टिफाइंग अथॉरिटी. सर्टिफाइंग अथॉरिटी के जो ऊपर आप अथॉरिटी देख रहे हैं, दैट इज़ कंट्रोलर, और कंट्रोलर के जो अबव अथॉरिटी है, दैट इज़ द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट. सो कंट्रोलर इज़ alone cannot just hold all the responsibilities. So there may be the deputy controllers and the assistant controllers. They perform the functions assigned to them by the controller, and they work under the general superintendence of the controller. The qualifications, experience of the deputy controllers and the assistant controllers should be such as prescribed by the central government. The head office and branch office of the controller shall be at the such places as the central government you may specify, or central government wherever they think fit. So that may be the that may be the place for the branch office or the head office of the controller, and there shall be a seal of the office of the controller. These are the functions of the controller. Controller is responsible to supervise the activities of the certifying authorities. Certifying public keys are all available with the controller. Controller is the authority who maintains the repository of all the public keys in the whole country. Whosoever has taken the digital signature, the address of the public keys are available in the repository maintained by the controller. Then controller is responsible to maintain the standards, just to check out the standards, whether all the rules have been followed by the certifying authorities in true spirit or not. They used to check the qualification and experience of the certifying authority. They used to see the contents written on the digital signature certificates. They used to check out the terms and conditions, whether the certifying authorities have followed all the terms and conditions properly or not. They are responsible just to check if there is any conflict of interest in between the certifying authority and the subscribers. So they lay down the duties of the certifying authorities. So overall above, if you will see that the functions of the controller are related with the certifying authority. They are the whole sole head, and they used to check out all the activities. They provide the directions and guidance to the certifying authority in all their day-to-day functioning. So this is the all about the functions of the controllers. Yes, there may be the foreign certifying authorities. If any foreign person want to just apply to be the certifying authority in India, so and if the central government thinks it is okay, so the controller may, with the previous approval of the central government and by notification given in the official gazette, may recognize any foreign certifying authority as a certifying authority for this act. And like if the controller, if he satisfies that the certifying authority, foreign certifying authority is contravening any of the conditions, so he can revoke such recognition, or he can cancel that license whatever they have given to that foreign certifying authority. Moving further, controller, as I already told you, like he acts as a repository. He maintains one repository in which there is a computerized database of all the public keys which is maintained by the controller. So this is one important function of the controller. Who are called as the certifying authorities? Already we have discussed. They are the kind of the authorities to whom we can apply for the digital signatures. They used to verify the subscribers, their identity, everything, all the information given by the applicant or the subscriber, and then they used to provide the digital signatures. So certifying authority is expected to reliably identify persons applying for signature. They reliably verify their legal capacity and confirm the attribution of a public signature key. So this is the role of the certifying authority. For penalties and adjudications, like here we can discuss, the act contemplates a dual scheme in regard to wrongful acts concerning the computers, and certain acts are visited with so-called penalties, which are however adjudicated not before courts but before the adjudication officers. The good thing is that in this act, for the cases up to rupees 5 crore, there is an adjudication officer who used to resolve these kind of the cases. But above the limit of 5 crore, there is a court named as CRAT, that is Cyber Regulatory Appellate Tribunal. So for above 5 crore case, one can go to CRAT, and if the transaction is in between up to rupees 5 crores, so it is the adjudicating officer who resolves such kind of the problems. For certain kind of the offences, if there are certain offences which are related with the computer crimes, so there may be the penalty, there may be the damages that may be imposed as a penalty by the adjudicating officer on the person who has committed that offence, and that kind of the compensation may be up to rupees 1 crore. Like following can be the categories of the offenses, or following may be the offenses: accessing or securing access to the computer network, downloading any data information from the computer network without permission, or damaging the computer network, disrupting the computer network, denying access to the person who was authorized, providing assistance to any person to facilitate access to computer network in contravention of the provisions of the act or the rules. Or every person who is using the IT Act, he has to just file a return, and if the person failing to provide information or failing to file a return which is required by the IT Act, he has to pay a penalty not exceeding 10,000 rupees for every day during which the failure continues. So if there is any person who is doing any sort of hacking, tampering with the computer source document, manipulating any computer network, so he can be penalized by the adjudicating officer, and the penalties would be in the form of the compensation or the money, and that the compensation can be up to rupees 1 crore. So this is about the penalties. This is all about the adjudicating officer. Adjudication officer is appointed by the central government where any person has committed a contravention of the IT Act or any rule or regulation he has contravened. So the adjudication officer is the appropriate authority who decides about these kind of the cases. He may impose the penalty or may award compensation in accordance with the provisions of this act. It is the central government who appoints such kind of the officers. Any officer who is not below the rank of a director to Government of India or equivalent officer of state government may be appointed as the adjudication officer, and the person who the government is going to appoint as an adjudication officer must have the experience in the field of IT or legal, and he should have the judicial experience also. The cases up to the limit of rupees 5 crores are decided or are just solved by the adjudicating officers under the IT Act, while adjudicating officer judges any case or adjudicates any case. So he used to consider the following important factors: the amount of gain or unfair advantage which has come as a result of that default, the amount of loss caused to any person as a result of the default, and the repetitive nature of the default. So keeping into consideration all three important points, adjudication officer used to decide the amount of claim that may be imposed on the person who has committed that offense. The powers of the adjudicating officers are same as the judge of the civil court has. So the cases up to 5 crores, they come under the jurisdiction of the adjudicating officer under IT Act. Then the upper court, which is named as CRAT, Cyber Regulatory Appellate Tribunal. So chapter 10 of this act, it provides for the establishment of one or more CRAT, and it lays down the provisions regarding its jurisdiction, composition, powers and procedures. So if any person who is aggrieved means like pidit, not satisfied with the order of the controller of certifying authority or the adjudicator, he can further appeal to CRAT within the 45 days of the decision. So how the CRAT is established? It is the central government that established one or more appellate tribunals to be known as the CRAT or CAT, that is the Cyber Appellate Tribunal. Central government also specify in the notification the matter and places in relation to which the CRAT may exercise its jurisdiction. The CRAT shall consist of one chairperson and such other number of members as the central government may by notification in the official gazette appoint. The selection of chairperson and members of CRAT shall be made by central government in consultation with Chief Justice of India. The jurisdiction, power and authority of CRAT may be exercised by the benches thereof. Under CRAT, the cases are resolved with the benches. A bench may constitute of one chairperson and one or two other members, and the bench of the CRAT shall sit at New Delhi and at such other places as the central government may in consultation with the chairperson by notification in the official gazette specify. The central government shall by notification in the official gazette specify the areas in relation to which each bench of CRAT may exercise its jurisdiction. The chairperson of CRAT, if he thinks, may transfer any case to the other bench or may transfer the member of the one bench to the another bench, or if at any stage of the hearing it appears to CRAT that the case or matter is of such nature that it should be transferred to some other bench, so he may transfer that case to some other bench. As far as qualifications of the chairperson and the members are concerned, a person shall not be qualified for appointment as a chairperson of CRAT if he is or has been or is qualified to be a judge of a high court. Want to say here that the person who has been a judge of a high court can only be eligible to hold the post of the chairperson under the CRAT. The members of CRAT, except the judicial members, shall be appointed by central government from among the people those who have the special knowledge of information technology, telecommunication, industry management and consumer affairs. To whomsoever the government used to appoint as the member of the CRAT, they are the people those who have worked or associated with the big offices of the government, either the central government or the state government. Maybe that they hold the post of additional secretary to the government of India or to the central government for a period of not less than 1 year, or even they have worked with Indian government as a joint secretary or any other equivalent post they hold in the previous years. For even they hold the post like this for a period of not less than 7 years. So that kind of the people can only be appointed as a member of the CRAT by the central government. Then the judicial members of the CRAT shall be appointed by the central government from amongst the people those who have served under Indian legal service, or even if they have hold the post of additional secretary for a period of not less than 1 year, or grade 1 post of that service for a period of not less than 5 years. The chairperson of the CRAT may hold the office for a term of 5 years from the date on which he enters upon his office, or until he attain the age of 65 years, whichever is earlier. Before appointing any person as the chairperson or member of CRAT, the central government satisfies that this person has no personal or financial interest into the transactions in which he is going to deal. Any officer of the central government or state government on his selection as the chairperson or member of the CRAT has to retire from the service that he joined in the government office before this appointment. Salary allowances would be the same as the government will deem fit. The chairperson has all the power of superintendence, direction and control on all the members, those who are associated with the bench. The chairperson of CRAT shall have the powers of general superintendence and directions in the conduct of affairs of that court, that tribunal, and in addition, he presides over the meetings of the tribunal, exercise and discharge such other functions of the tribunal as may be prescribed. He is the person who can distribute the whole business among the various benches. So this is all about the powers of superintendence and direction and control of the chairperson of CRAT. He has the power to transfer the cases to any other benches. In the case of the bench, the decision of the majority always prevails. Like for example, if there is any case in which there is one chairperson and one member, so both are one is in the favor of the case, the other one is in against. So in that case, they may just appoint one other member, and the majority, whatever the majority will say, that decision will prevail. If there is any vacancy, casual vacancy that comes into the office of the CRAT, so that vacancy may be filled by the central government. And in last, if any person is aggrieved by the decision given by the CRAT, so he may further appeal for this to the High Court within the 60 days of that order. So this is all about the rules, qualifications, appointment and all other aspects related with the court under the IT Act, that is CRAT, Cyber Regulatory Appellate Tribunal. And in last, offences, that means apradh. There are a lot of the offences that are covered by the IT Act. If any person tries to tamper with the computer source document, it is treated as one of the computer crime, and for this he shall be punishable with imprisonment up to 3 years or with fine, or up to rupees 2 lakhs or with both. So this is the case if there is any person who has tried to tamper with the computer source documents. The second important offense is the hacking with the computer system. If any person intentionally tries to hack or tries to cause or wrongful loss or damage to the computer source of any other system, try to delete or alter any information in the computer resource, or try to hack the most important information or the confidential information from the computer documents, So it is treated as like he has committed hacking, and he shall be punished with the imprisonment which is up to 3 years, or with fine which may extend to 2 lakh rupees, or with both. Then there may be the publishing of obscene information in the electronic form. If any person has done this kind of the crime, so on first conviction he shall be punishable with imprisonment of 3 years, or with fine up to 5 lakh. But if he repeats the same kind of the offense, in that kind of the offense he shall be punishable with imprisonment of 5 years, or with fine up to 10 lakh rupees. If any person has tried to secure access to any computer systems or computer network without the authority, in that case he will be punishable with imprisonment which may extend to 10 years or fine. Misrepresentation about a material fact or suppression of a material fact from the controller or the certifying authority, he shall be punished with imprisonment up to 2 years, or with fine which may extend up to 1 lakh rupees, or with both. If there is any person who has tried to breach of confidentiality and privacy, in that case the person may be can have the punishment of the imprisonment up to 3 years, or with fine which may extend to 2 lakh rupees. Publishing of a digital signature certificate in a wrong form, so that is also punishable. So this is all about the penalties that has been covered by IT Act. I hope this video will help you in understanding the provisions related with the IT Act, and for further information you may just go through all your notes that are provided to you. And thank you. All the best.